call to order. And we'll start the Pledge of Allegiance led by Trustee Davis.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I certainly do. Trustees, give me just a second here to get set up, and then we'll be able to talk about a little bit of tonight's good news. Okay, trustees, first up, you may have noticed this new thing popping up on our Facebook page. We've recently developed a partnership in town here with Lev's Bakery. They actually approached us, and we have worked together to kind of denote this as our Sugar and Shine donut drop-in. So it's another way that we have of celebrating just the incredible people who make up our school district and really do make it a wonderful place to be for kids and staff and families. And so thanks to the generosity of Lev's, we do spread a little extra joy from now and again to recognize the staff, their dedication, their kindness, their hard work, and the fact that they truly do make a difference each and every day for kids here in Tecumseh. So on the screen, you know these faces. You see Greg Dolson, high school assistant principal, Simon Saboski, a choir teacher, and Maria Burns, the secretary at Acres. And I thought I'd share two more. We had some kudos for Mr. Lamka, our SRO, as well as Miss Glenn, a preschool teacher over at Sutton. So trustees in the community, if you would like to nominate a staff member for a little Sugar and Shine, you can find that link on our Facebook page. So kind of sticking with those same lines, you've seen these before, but it's been a minute, so I thought I would come back and recognize a few more shout outs that have come in for staff that make up our schools. So first up tonight is Miss Carrie Barden. Carrie's a 5th grade math and science teacher at the middle school, and the shout out is Carrie goes way above for her students as well as the entire district. She is always first to volunteer, giving up her own time to make each Tecumseh student feel important. And truthfully, that's probably an understatement, trustees. Next up is a shout out for Jean Entrup, who's an attendance secretary here at the high school. Miss Entrup is the best at keeping track of all the students' attendance and visitors at the high school. She is the first person you see, and she is the first person you see and the last for the day. She is always so kind and helpful. So trustees, a bit of a different direction. I wanted to share this with you. What you see on the screen, I know it's a little hard to see, and I'm going to say more about it, but what you see on the screen there is really a culminating activity that's actually on display out here in the, I believe it's the B or C PAL on the first floor in the high school. So what this is Miss Arnold's Advanced Placement World History class wrapped up a semester-long project where they were exploring the rise and fall of empires throughout history. So what they did as the culminating project, they analyzed how government systems, religious practices, social structures, economic factors, among other things, and how those interplayed with one another to shape civilizations. And then they examined key events and circumstances that eventually led to their decline. The pictures, like I said, the pictures don't necessarily do this justice, but it is a way that students analyzed history and then looked for themes on what's playing out in today's world. So a couple more pictures here. The Ming Dynasty. Certainly a number of different dynasties are on display here at our high school, and I would really encourage you, if you have 5 minutes, go and check it out sometime soon. And then last up tonight, trustees, you know there's an ongoing partnership between Mrs. Lammers from Sutton and the Cambrian Assisted Living Center. And so I have another update for you. I did ask Mrs. Lammers to actually write an intro for this, so I'm going to read it to you. She wrote, "This past late November, early December, our second graders performed selections from Mary Poppins and The Sound of Music, along with folk songs that they had been learning in music class. They even taught the residents a clapping game to Miss Mary Mack. Then, just before the holiday break, the third graders shared several Christmas favorites and helped the residents learn a hand jive to Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree. Both visits, Ms. Lammer shares, were filled with joy, and the students had just as much fun as the residents. This monthly partnership has truly been a win-win. Students and parents love bringing smiles to the residents' faces, and the residents are always so gracious in thanking the students and me for visiting and trying something new together. So, rather than show you a few pictures, you know that I believe video oftentimes captures it much better. So here's a little flavor of the latest visit of our Sutton students to Cambria. So trustees, just a short video, but I do think it captures the energy and the feeling in the room and why events like that are so important, not just to the community, not just to our schools and our kids or our teachers, but it shows the interplay that can really occur when the schools are engaging with the broader community. So that's a wrap for tonight. Ms. Brooks, back to you.
All right, that takes us to public comment. Do we have public comment? In accordance with the Open Meeting Act of 1986, the board provides opportunity for citizens' input during the public comment section. Because agendas are full, each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. The board will listen, take comments and questions under advisement and not respond at this time. The presiding officer will refer questions to the superintendent for research and response. Okay.
I'm ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I'm a swim parent, 20 years. This is my last go. A couple more meets and I'm done. I'm glad. I'm glad and sad all at the same time. It's been a rough go the last 2 years, but to say that I'm discouraged would be an understatement. The pool was first talked about the 29th of 2023 about the roof. We all knew about it, and the board decided to kick the can down the road. When they could have fixed it, they didn't. Then we were asked for money, to which I talked to everybody I could, and we got it passed. That was about 93 grand every year from the city, from us, to the school. Then there's more money that needs to be done for the sinking fund, which I voted for, because I want my kids to swim for Tecumseh High. That was 2.5 million. You got it. Great. Now we're going to fix the roof. Now we're not. So this is a transactional relationship. You asked me for something, I provided. But now you're taking it away, and it's a community pool. So we, the community, should vote on that. Since when can we not? We gave you money, and you're taking away our pool. Now, is it great? No. I've seen them all, I've been to all of them. But it's ours. Why are you guys taking that away? Why are you taking away our right to vote on it? Now, if we vote on it and we say no, that's different. But we at least should have that right to vote on that. And if not, and if we say, hey, we don't want it anymore, then I have to live with that. But then do we get our money back? Because that's 93 grand from the city going to you guys. What are you guys gonna do with that? And the 2.5 million, are you just gonna, is that for the demolishment of our pool? Or are you gonna give that money back to us? I mean, I have deep concerns. I have 3 boys that's all went through. And to not have a pool, when we pay for it, I have a problem with that. I mean, this is what I do. I'm in finance I do finance all the time. To not receive something when we pay for it, I have a problem with, especially when it affects my taxes. So I would love to hear your answer to that. Thank you.
Can I get your name, please?
Mark Barr.
What's that?
Mark Barr.
Okay, thanks.
Any other public comment? Thank you. That will take us, sorry, to the Board of Education Student Representative, oh, I'm sorry, it is not, it's revisions and approval of agenda. And I do have a revision. We are looking at adding discussion regarding the copier RFPs. We've got the notes in our thing, but it wasn't added on the actual agenda. So I do have that one revision. Trustee Martinez,
Yep.
could you?
I move to approve the agenda with the addition of a discussion on the RFP for the copier added.
Second.
Roll call vote. Trustee Martinez?
Aye.
Trustee Davis?
Aye.
Trustee McGee?
Aye.
Trustee Simpson's not here. Trustee Lewis?
Aye.
Trustee Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. And that will take us to the Board of Education student report.
Hello everyone, it's good to see you guys all again on a snow day. Thank you guys for having me. It's been a pretty good start, I'd say, just in general. To the second semester, we kicked it off. Admittedly, I haven't been in the second semester very long, but I think it's going really good. We had a lot of tribe lessons. One of the first things that I had was that we had a lot of tribe lessons on our return back to the building, talking about and reaffirming like the basic expectations that the high school has of turning in work on time and all the things tied to your tardies reset, your absences reset, all those different things that a lot of people get a second shot at because maybe you were close first semester, second semester you get a brand new go at it. So we went over a lot of lessons like that with all the students. We have, as a senior class in our seminar period, we have continued to contribute towards achieving our portrait of a graduate expectations that we have at the high school. It's various lessons on healthy emotional practices, how to form good relationships that are going to last in a professional setting, and a lot of other basic social skills that no matter whether we go into employment, further education, or the military, it's all going to benefit us in our adult lives, which I think has been really positive impact. Shifting a little bit to more sports, our girls basketball teams, last year's state champs, are doing really good right now with a 10-2 record. Kind of showing just like the high standard of athletics plus the academics that we have at the high school. And I've been to 2 games so far, and it's really impressive. I just have to say they're doing really, really amazing stuff over there. Similar to the sports, we're currently in Tecumseh week, which is Tecumseh Indians celebrate winter sports season. I had to explain to one of my dad. He was like, "What is Tecumseh?" And he had to break down the acronym to him. We have a ton of fun activities coming up this week, like powder buff. So the guys are similar to how girls played football in the fall. Guys are going to play volleyball this week. We have the Tecumseh Assembly, where we're going to do a ton of fun assembly games with all the different classes. And we have a ton of spirit days ahead. Tomorrow's Neon Day. I do know that. It was sent out to the school. And also perhaps the most meaningful activity and the point of the week is recognizing every winter sport and the things that they've achieved so far in their season. We have 3 band students who've received all-state honors, including Alyssa, I don't know how to pronounce the last name, Eater, there you go. So I don't want to mess it up. Lucas Gray and Andrew McKinchak. Showing, I think, really well, just outside of, I think, common topics are athletics and academics, success in extracurriculars past just sports, which I think is really important. Upon return on the second semester, we also had SOS, which is the Sources of Strength Club at the high school. Hand out suckers and other goodies coming back from winter break when you entered the door. I think it just made the return easy for some of the kids, because some of them are still pretty salty, but a sucker always makes your morning better. And then on a little bit more of a serious note, as many of you probably know, what I consider one of the best teachers in our school system, Mr. Ramsel, was just previously diagnosed with cancer and has begun treatment at the high school. I think you guys know Mr. Ramsley comes in and he talks about equations and the trig star competition every year. I wanted to highlight the strength and the calm demeanor that he did and continues to display around the subject, even though it's kind of a tough one. He took a lot of precautions to break the news gently and provide support for every student, considering the weight of the subject. But despite that, he's been in a really good mood. He continues to show up for us as a teacher despite everything that he's going through. And I thought it was a really good display of mental strength and care towards us as his students, and I thought it deserved to be recognized because I think my entire class could agree, or every kid who has him, that he's taken it in stride and really just done a great job with letting us all know. With all the snow days, I know it seems like we are losing a lot of progress, but I want to rest assured that all of our teachers at the high school have done a really great job at making sure we're not all falling behind. And I can testament to this. I have a sophomore sister, and I know a lot of kids in different grades, so it's not just us as seniors. Whether it's posting things in Google Classroom, small assignments to keep up, or giving like the week's work on Monday, so just in case you can plan ahead. I definitely think that it's gone to where I'm still learning on the snow days. I'm not just sitting at home not doing anything. So I think that's important. And I think for a lot of seniors, getting senioritis has been positive because the days we are at school, they tend to focus more, I think, which is good. And my last thing that I have on my agenda tonight, sorry, I know this is a bit long-winded. I know that while the second semester is a new start for many, for a lot of us seniors, it's becoming clear our time is almost over here at Tecumseh. We realistically have 3 more months, and then we're done. This has led a lot of people to become reminiscent and think back to our entire time in the Tecumseh public school system. And we've had a positive and somewhat unique experience, I think, from 4th grade on, with us entering Compass and a ton of different changes back when we were really young, and being there for 4 years. We've had moments like COVID, but we've also had a ton of positives, like our 8th grade trip to Washington, D.C. is one that stands out to us. And I just think that it's important to know that all the memories we carry will be with us for the rest of our lives, and they've helped build us into the students we are today. Every experience from kindergarten or young fives on, every single one has led us to where we are today as upcoming graduates from Tecumseh High School. So I just want to say, I know I only get to talk about the high school, and I think it's great that I do, and everything that we get to experience here. I just think that we as a class owe a really big thank you to all the schools and all the buildings in the Tecumseh public school system, because without all of them leading up until our cumulative moment of graduating, we wouldn't be here today. So I just think it's important to highlight that and everything else, because I only do get to talk about the high school. And that's everything that I had. Do you guys have any questions for me? So, I know this was a long-winded one, I'm sorry.
I don't have any questions, Tucker, but congratulations on being named valedictorian and on your student athlete finalist.
Yes,
So.
thank you. Oh.
Well done, sir.
Okay. So that will take us to Safety and Facilities Committee, a report by Ms. Davis.
Yes, we met last week on the 21st, so Wednesday, call to order at 5:03 p.m. Unfortunately, Mr. Miller wasn't able to attend, but we do have an update on his question. And so from a superintendent report, we are voting today on the recreational millage, the pool operational cost that was mentioned in the public comment, and then Patterson and Herrick Park plans. So you all, if you watched the update, saw that Patterson is sold. So we have the check in the bank, is what I heard.
Yes, we do.
So, and that for Herrick Park, the potential buyer's architects visited the building so that they can put together some viable options for review with the city. And we had another potential buyer kind of check in on the progress of the sale. So also some movement there with Herrick Park. Josh shared his Director of Operations report. So we talked about the printer and print services RFP. He'll go through that with us tonight as a discussion item, so I won't go into that. We talked about the door buzzer at the high school, working to get the angle of the buzzer camera at the right angle so that it's easy for the secretary that sits at the attendance desk to be able to see the person in the video or in the camera. It's a pretty easy fix. It sounded like just a new box with a new angle, not much cost there. we talked through a little bit about the pool, getting drawings ready to submit to the state, and final drafts. We'll have to look for feedback for the fill area, what we might want to do there. And Mr. Madison also told us that they are watching the condition of the building very closely for safety concerns if we should ever have to kind of block off certain areas. The concern, of course, there, we want to delay that as much as possible because childcare entrance is through that courtyard. And so, but they're working on looking at what would they need to do if the safety of the building, because it's still a ways off to demolish, what we would need to do to make sure that everyone stayed safe that walked around that building from the outside. Then we talked about capital and sinking fund projects. We talked through the TMS barn, and kind of what the plan is. Some very high quotes came in, but Creekhoff came in with a quote just to reskin it and to redo the roof, which came in about 60% of the original bid that Josh had seen, and that's in progress. And then we talked through the elevator jack replacement at the middle school. So it is operational with some temporary countermeasures, so they are able to keep oil in the mechanism and keep it moving, kind of nursing it along. We do have a quote for it, and we are working to replace that in June. And then the next sinking fund and capital projects, we went through that a little bit. No big change from what we've seen before. I think as a board, we'll continue, as a committee, we'll continue to hear about that, and then also kind of future-wise, what do we see with the buildings, along with the sinking fund and other, the capital projects that amount 3% that we put in every year, kind of what Josh sees as kind of the next step there for all of that. So for the tennis courts, we are pending approval of a grant with the United States Tennis Association, which would allow us basically to take about $200,000 off the cost of redoing the tennis courts. So that's a big deal, and bid opening starts this week. So overall, good discussion on those items, and then he just shared that no real updates to the estimates of the capital updates. We had a little bit of a discussion, my impression and Josh's impression about the construction market kind of maybe stabilizing from a cost perspective. So hopefully we'll be able to see either no change to some of those budget items or some of them coming down. And then we talked about safety and security updates and tentative next phase projects. So we're still talking about the Raptor kiosks at the high school and the middle school first. Those are opportunities to provide more security as people enter the building into the high school and the middle school. We also talked about the Filter First Safe Drinking Water. So we didn't get the award again. Again, that grant from the state has several different things that you check off. Our demographic at our school maybe does not support some of those things that are checked. So that's 2 years in a row we weren't able to get the grant. But retrofits will begin this school year because we have a deadline of 6:30 to get all of those filters replaced and to meet the goals there. And then Motorola radios district-wide, grant was applied for, but we did not get the grant, the initial grant that we applied for, so we're looking at, are there other ways to get funding? So some of these things, Josh, again, will have to look at everything, bring it to the Facilities and Safety Committee, have some discussion, and then bring it to the board about what do we do. A lot of Josh's team's work is done in the summer, but he does a lot of prep work on the financial side and the planning side during the school year, so I imagine that as we go through the rest of the school year, we'll hear more and more about these important projects. And then we adjourned at 5:32.
All right.
One other thing, we did have, Mr. Hilton and I did have some discussion about the start time of the meeting, so we're gonna start facilities meetings at 5:30 now to allow everybody enough time to get to the meeting and to be present for it, so. That'll work, and then as we move into the spring and summer months with certain community activities that some of us are involved in, we'll talk about if Wednesday is the right day and that sort of thing, but as of right now, we'll move to 5:30, so, thank you.
I have a question. Who do the fees go to? So the anticipated fees right here for the projects. Who do we pay that fee to?
That's the construction management company that we voted on.
Okay.
And then 2 key points there, 5 and 6, the TPS district-wide capacity utilization study, pre-design conceptual study. They're kind of throwing that on top, just time and materials to kind of help us get some looks at what we can do both with the pool area, and then, you know, the larger discussion of we're getting kind of tight at certain buildings with enrollment, and so, do we have capacity in other places in the district, and then how do you do that? How do you make that happen, or do we need to maybe look not at moving people within buildings, but what else can we do? So they're doing that just for time and materials. Thanks for asking that. I flew right over that.
Anything else from Ms. Davis? All right. Next up would be the Budget Committee report, and the chair was not available, so I sat in for that, so I will give that report. A lot of it will be covered shortly here by Steve, so I'm just going to touch on a few points. Currently, we have 3 sections of GSRP preschool and 1 pay section. There was some discussion around going to 4 sections of the GSRP. So that was discussed quite a bit. There was a huge discussion about committee of the whole for the budget committee. We'll be discussing that again as a group here momentarily. And then we also were hearing about a one-time allotment from the state to compensate educators and how that might look. But I'm going to stop there because, as I said, Steve's going to be going over most of it. And that takes us to Mr. Lennar with the monthly financial report.
Well, maybe just a little bit more detail on the 27L teachers' compensation rate. So, state law put a pool together, but as is very often the case with any legislature, the implementing procedures are not super clear. So it's not clear the definition of an educator or kind of how much by educator type there is. So Mr. Hilton shared with us that he's working with the TEA on defining that. How do we take our pool of money and share it across our educator base? So,
Thank you.
yep.
Good evening. This evening in the monthly financial report, it consists of 2 different topics. One is the treasurer's report that shows a detail of the different expenses from payroll to accounts payable payments made during the past month of December. And the other report that's included in there is a summary of revenues and expenses in terms of budget and year-to-date, where we are in each of those summary areas. So far, we're tracking where we should be with the different revenues and expenses, and things appear to be on target. There's not a lot. I'll get into more detail on the budget when we do the budget amendment discussion later. But this is the basic monthly treasurer's report, financial report information.
If I could clarify, that budget is the new amended budget, sorry, right here. The new amended budget versus
Yes,
the original budget.
The budget that's in there is the current amended budget that we'll be presenting this evening. And the reason that is because in order to get to the amended budget, we have to put the numbers into the system. So we have to assume that the board will accept our recommendations. If they don't, we'll come to a new budget amendment at some other time. But the numbers, in order to get to it, I have to put them into the system so it can get us the total. So the budget column that you see there is not the original budget that was presented and approved back in June.
I have a question. 1225, I assume it's instructional technology. Why is that overspent now? Do you know, or that, you know why?
Let me just find it here. 1225 to 2. Not specifically instructional technology, are Chromebooks, computers, things that are directly student-related technology purchases. The reason it's all spent is because we buy those early in the year, so they're in place for the start of the school year. In the budget amendment, there might have been a last payment there I'm not aware of, but we'll work on that and adjust it later. I don't know the specifics in terms of the details of what was purchased.
Okay.
Are these the anticipated documents we can expect in the future on a monthly basis?
I'm sorry?
These two documents, are these what we can expect in the future as far as documents that will be prepared, or is there something else?
From the, my recollection is that when I first met with the Budget Committee and we were working on documents to share, we shared these as examples, and I thought there wasn't an up or down vote necessarily, but I thought that there was a consensus that this is the way we'd be going. So yes, I believe that these would be the reports that we intend to keep on giving unless there's something else the board wants.
And I would agree with what Mr. Leonard just shared. And one of the things that is on my mind is connected to the question you asked. And if this is meeting the needs of the board, then we will continue with this approach. If the board is of the mind that it would like something different or in addition to, then I would like to either have that discussion with a committee of the whole or back to the small budget committee for a recommendation on what is needed and wanted for board reports.
Yeah, I think month by month, to me, these are acceptable because we can ask questions. Of course, we're going to talk about how to ask questions and how to everyone to have the same access to the information, but just an idea. Some of these larger budget items, maybe occasionally going into some detail on a specific thing. So like, for example, I'm just pulling something out here. Pupil transportation, you know, maybe once a year explaining, or Darcy can explain to us what goes into that and how it's calculated and how what can affect it and make it not meet budget, because it's one of those that can be a little bit variable.
Right.
Depending on.
As long as we know early enough to talk about it, I mean, because I'd have to go look at our contract with First Student now, but obviously the biggest thing that we have, I think our contract calls for a daily amount, and so it's per day of instruction, and so we have so many, obviously, normal days of instruction, but then there are addendums in there for field trips, athletic trips, and what those will be charged at, and those are all part of it that come up with the total beyond the normal maintenance and fuel and those kinds of things. I mean, I'm familiar with it enough, but I don't know the details of it.
Well, and
I know you're just pulling that one up, but it was an easy one for me to know. I know enough about, but I don't know the details.
But I think too, we would, you know, to your point, the goal would be to have a schedule for that, so it isn't surprising. But I think, and we'll talk more, I don't want to say too much before the committee of the whole discussion, but from the goal of all board members kind of understanding, you know, we could maybe set a schedule where,
Sure.
you know, not every month, but
Yeah, that's
occasionally we go into some more detail and understand it a little bit better,
Yep.
and then also the public can know.
Yep, absolutely. We could build a
I think there's some other
Schedule for
facts and
that.
figures that we can pull out, just to say, you know, of our total $34 million, $19 million is paid in wages, $12,000 is paid in benefits, and talk about what some of those are, and those are close numbers, they're not exact, but we could pull some other things to give you a better feel for what it's spent on versus just these accounting categories that we use.
As well as I think both you and Darcy have demonstrated in the committee meetings, if we do have a question, then you bring the details, so, I think that's
Yep.
helpful, so thank you.
So these are much more detailed reports than we're used to receiving. These would currently replace the revenue expense and fund balance statement. That's kind of a one-page summary, and also the cash flow statement that we had been getting.
That is correct. Should that be the recommendation either of the whole group or the small budget committee group, so that I can deliver what is wanted to the board members?
Steve, I just have one question. I was looking at over here. Sorry, this is Darren. Looking at the year-to-date expenditures, it looks like we're at about 14.3 million, right? Year-to-date, and then looking at our year-to-date revenue, we're at 9.2. So are we running on a loan right now to make the payments? Because I know our fund balance.
We have cash in the bank.
Okay.
Our cash flow is positive.
Okay, perfect. That makes me really
Good
happy.
question.
Thank you.
That'd be a concern.
Yeah.
So you actually have a report for us?
Pardon?
You actually have a report for us?
Yeah.
We're already jumping into questions. Sorry
Why
about that,
don't we
Steve.
let you give your report?
You know, the biggest part, I guess, maybe in terms of financial update, is that we've, in 3 months, we've come a long ways in terms of getting a better understanding of what our budget is. I'll explain more of that again when we get to the budget amendment. But I feel much more comfortable in terms of the numbers that we have to share with you now, and my basic knowledge of the district and operations. And I think we're in a much better place in the short time so far and we've made a lot of progress. Okay.
And that takes us to capital project sinking fund update by Mr. Madison.
All right, good evening. This evening I wanted to give an update. We're moving into the second half of this fiscal year, so I wanted to give an update on where we are with our capital projects and sinking fund. So the first thing I wanted to start with is where we were when we originally put this together and we went out for that sinking fund. This is actually the project list that was presented in 2024 with all of the projected capital projects at each of our buildings, and included the pool repairs, which at that time were projected at $2.5 million to repair the roof. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later in this presentation, but I wanted to make sure I point that out. One of the things you'll notice in here, and we talked about this at the time, is you see that last column, we do show a little bit of a deficiency there, but that's because we're projecting into year 6, and this is only a 5-year sinking fund. So those first 5 years, we did go out to get enough to cover the work that we had for those first 5 years, but once we start talking about year 6, year 7, you will start to see some deficiencies and additional capital projects that are gonna need to be done in that time. On the next page, you'll see on the next slide, this is where we currently are now in 2026. You'll see the total amount is real close. I think it's a couple $100,000 difference of that 11,000,004. I think originally we were 11,1. But you'll see the big things that have changed here is we've pushed a number of items to year 3 and 4 instead of 1 and 2. Mainly that was due to the pool and the additional structural testing and, kind of gathering that information to make a plan for that. With those then dollars coming in years 3 and 4. The other adjustment, and I've highlighted in yellow, Steve had alluded to a little bit, but now with our new financial team here, we have adjusted that annual capital outlay, that 3% down to about $600,000 to be a little more conservative versus the 710 that the previous had made the assumption that would be that capital outlay of 710. So there is a little difference there. If you'll notice, though, through there with the new pool demolition still estimated at $2.3 million, and the additional costs, a lot of those big costs in years 3 to 4 are going to be roofs for the high school and middle school, fire alarms and other infrastructure items, all things that we talked about in the original sinking fund. Also includes HVAC equipment, all things that are over 25 years old to upgrade and replace. With this one, like I said, you'll see an additional in that last column. Again, we are out to year 7 here. Each year we push this out. So you see I've already got the column ready for years 8 and 9. As we get into the second half of this fiscal year, we're going to start looking at, what's coming year 7, year 8, year 9. But with each year we move out, again, that sinking fund dollars do end at year 5. Here are the current projects that are underway in the design and development stage. So we do have the high school and middle school fire alarm replacements. As you see, and I know Ms. Davis had mentioned earlier in the meeting, that anticipated fee is the architectural and engineering fees. That is design, that is permitting, that is the state of Michigan. So that is what that anticipated fee is, and it's based on that fee percentage, which is a sliding scale that was approved by the board when our architects and engineers were brought on, which is Whiteman Associates. Right now, we're looking at, like I said, the fire alarm system. Over the next couple months, you'll see an RFP coming through for that. We're in the design phase right now. The pool demolition, again, with that, you guys have been approved to move forward with the demolition phasing, so we are in the design and documentation phase. We will see demolition pricing coming back here in the next few months once we get approval from the state and all of our bids go out. And I know we said 2.3, as you'll see, it's 1.8 plus our architectural engineer fees, and we do have some contingency dollars figured in there as well, just to cover what we may run into with demolition. So we are still anticipating being very close to that 2.3 million. The rooftop HVAC unit replacement here at the high school, believe it or not, these are the oldest HVAC units we have, because this was built in 2000, so these are 25, 26 years old. The others at the elementaries, those were actually put in like 2001, 2002 in the last round of renovations. So those are on schedule right now to get RFPs put together and designed. The roof here at the high school and the middle school, and then as Ms. Davis had also mentioned about the district-wide capacity and utilization study and additional pre-design, those are time and material items they've added to assist the district as needed. So the big one being the additional pre-design conceptual study is time and material for what do we do with that space at the pool once that's demolished. So they do have a little bit of room in there for time and material to help us with that once the committees come together on that.
Do you have any more detail that you can share on the fire alarms? I don't recall seeing that, and it's a huge expense.
That is listed in the capital projects listing, and I can share that in there.
Is that new to the list, or?
It is not. It was in there previously in that spreadsheet that we shared before. So
Okay.
I can share that again with you. But no, and that is the middle school right now, the fire alarm is obsolete. We no longer can get parts for that. We have a few things that we've been able to get some parts to keep it moving, but past this year, it's going to be very hard to keep that in operation and pass inspection. So that one, and then the high school here, same thing. We are at that 25-year mark. We're starting to have a lot of issues, a lot of nuisance alarms, things we can't get parts for. So that one, we have them doing the design study along with the middle school to compare, because there should be some savings just based on scale, doing both the buildings versus doing one and then going back out and doing the other. So we are looking at what those options are. So we do have them do them designed for both.
Hey Josh, does the fire and safety, does that fall under any kind of grant or any other kind of funds that we can get to support that because it is safety?
Some. So unfortunately, 31AA would have covered a lot of that, but since we're not getting those funds, then at this time, no. But
No.
there is opportunities that we could possibly
Maybe.
look at, so, yeah.
And is that a 100% sinking fund supported?
Either sinking or capital fund, either could be used, yeah.
Would it be possible to maybe add one more column to know where the funding's coming from for these projects, if they are sinking or if there's something else, just so as a board, we kind of have a
Yep.
feel? When I
Absolutely.
first read this, I thought 100% was sinking fund, and I looked at the pamphlet, and I don't remember anything about fire and safety being in the advertisements we made for the sinking fund.
Yeah,
So
we
I
could
was
take a
trying to
look. It
connect.
could be part of that 3% capital, but I can pull that spreadsheet and share it again, and I can absolutely add columns to this. That's not a
Perfect.
problem.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Are the elementaries not going to have to be addressed at this time?
Not yet, but at some point they are. That is in our capital list as well. So we do have their roofs and their fire alarms. They've got some clock and PA systems. There is a number of things listed in that capital list that I can share that will be addressed. At this point, we're prioritizing where we have the biggest need, and that is with the high schools and the middle school especially, because that system is obsolete and parts are no longer available.
Josh, if I remember correctly, when we were going through the full list, correct me, please. I think the elementaries were in that 4 to 6.
They
years,
were.
Right,
Yep.
just because of age, but I mean, the age is, to Mrs. McGee's point, the age is really close.
It is,
So,
yep. Unfortunately, there are different systems, so the system we have there, we can still get parts for, so that's kind of where it moves that priority for the middle school and possibly the high school here as well. And then the only other thing I had this evening, just to go over with the sinking fund, this goes hand in hand, is just another refresher on where we are with the pool, where that started, and kind of where we are now. As we've talked about a number of times, I've shared this timeline, but I want to share it again. With July of '22 is when those initial roof inspections came through. from Tremco that said our overall roof conditions were poor, and they recommended removal and replacement of the roof, but also a further inspection of the metal decking. That's what triggered the initial roof inspections in August of '22, where IMEG came out and did some visual inspections and did a report and recommended structural elements be examined by actual structural engineers and evaluated for repair and replacement. In July 2023, you'll see that we did have that roof structure assessment done, and that roof joists represent a structural safety concern. And at that point, SME recommended closure of the pool until repairs were made. August 5th of 2023, we talked about budget pricing and received some quotes from Savs Welding saying that the structural joist seat repairs alone would be $259,000. And then in November, we did some supplemental roof structure assessments where joist bearing seat corrosion did not represent as much of a safety concern as what SME originally assessed, and recommended that we could reopen the pool for normal operation. In December, we did that. We opened for normal operation. And while we did that, we started putting drawing and bid packages together to develop what was recommended by SME, which was repair the roof structure, the roof girders, where they meet the walls. In February 24, we put out a request for proposal for the repairs of that structure, and the bids were received, which were $315,000 from Savs to make those roof repairs, which didn't include additional costs for sandblasting and recoating of the roof structure once the repairs were made. We also looked at additional costs for HVAC and dehumidification systems that would need to be replaced. And since the demolition would take out some of the existing ceiling and ductwork, and also due to the age of that system, and that was where we projected the estimated $2.5 million, and that we went out to seek the community's help for that, in addition to the list of large capital projects we had. Of course, election day this passed, we started putting out our RFPs for architectural and engineering management companies. Over the next couple of months, those were presented to the board and approved. The architecture and engineering being approved in February 14th, and then on February 24th, February 10th, and then the next slide, on February 24th, we approved the construction management company. March of '25, we put together a strategy meeting for design, talked about how we move forward with these repairs that we were presented to us by the original engineering companies, and then we began the design and planning for the roof and the HVAC replacement. During that time, we had a catastrophic failure of the dehumidification and HVAC systems, which caused a closure of the pool. And at that time, we had plans to move forward with the HVAC system over the summer, staying on our original timeline of doing pool renovations beginning in March of 2026. Unfortunately, during that time, we did further investigations based on our architectural engineering teams who had concerns over not only the roof joist structures that were originally looked at, but the wall columns and further issues with the webbing and the roof decking. And then in June, July of this last year, we did remove blocks and tiles as requested by the architectural engineer companies, and we did the visual inspections, which prompted further actual ultrasonic structural testing by our architectural engineering companies, which was approved by the board in August and September of '25. And then October, I think we're on the next slide there. October, November of '25, we did do that selective interior demolition and structural testing. All the reports were received by the board, and then the board in December was giving a report by Magnus Engineering for the full structural reports and testing. And then they were given, we gave 3 options, one being the demolition of the pool, the other being demolition of just the exterior walls and roof, pretty much everything except for the pool basin itself, and then an option for a new pool facility at a different site. January 12th, the board was again presented this information, and then demolition of the current pool, moving through that process, was approved. And also a superintendent-led exploratory committee would be formed to discuss the future options.
And then here we are to tonight, where our architectural engineering teams are working on the conceptual designs, they're working on drawings and permitting, and putting submittals together. And you guys, over the next couple months, we will have that information coming back to the board, so you can get a better idea of what that looks like, those actual hard numbers on demolition, and what that timeline looks like. So, is there any questions?
At some point in time, Josh, I'd like to see the numbers that the district has put into the pool as part of this presentation.
Sure.
I know, yes, we have a small millage that has covered a few things, but the school has paid for a great deal of this stuff ourselves out of our dollars.
Correct.
And so I think that would be helpful for the public to understand how much this has cost us.
Yep, and I can put that information together and definitely share with the board. I can tell you that we did some research. I reached out to Darcy and talked to her about what we get for that. So right now, we're getting around, it's up and down each year, depends on, tax values and that, but around $180,000 a year is what we get for that .25 recreational millage. We spend around $220,000, but that doesn't include salaries, so lifeguards, director, all those things. So in reality, closer to $300,000 it's costing the district each year, and we get about 175, 180 back for that recreational millage.
I know that we've also had, there was a pump or something that kept going out, and that was $5,000 each time it went out. I know we've had other expenses on top of our normal expenses, so
Yeah,
I just thought that might be helpful for the community.
it's been averaging just over $200,000 a year to operate that pool, not including salaries and like I said, staffing.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, that takes us to discussion items, and the very first one, Mr. Hilton, recreational millage.
Okay, thank you, President Brooks, trustees. We've talked about this a couple of times. You know that our district's recreational millage is set to expire here in 2026, and due to our 100% summer tax levy, a renewal would require placement on the May 2026 ballot with a February filing deadline. You know, as right there, what Mr. Madison was talking about, the millage supports the operational costs of our pool, but certainly not all of it. The pool is now closed and no longer operating. I think I shared with the board that the Safety and Facilities Committee, as well as the Budget Committee, had a chance to talk about this in small group and reviewed and recommended non-renewal, and I just wanted to bring it back for further board discussion and an eventual vote this evening. So I'll pause here for discussion.
When does the millage actually run out at?
So we have received our last payment.
Okay.
And Matt, with the pool being closed down, have we still been paying salaries?
So we still have a director who is on salary, who has done a number of other things for us. Beyond that, no.
And we also had some expenses for swim team, and those aren't part of the recreational millage, but maybe just to give a flavor that
Sure.
we are still.
Yes, we certainly do have some added costs with swim team, transportation, et cetera. And we've tried to honor our commitment to our swim teams and honoring their seasons, and we'll continue to try to do that moving forward.
And did we have some minimal expenses to kind of keep the pool area safe, or?
I would ask Mr. Madison if there's anything that you have done in that regard.
Yeah, there's still some additional costs for utilities and things like you said to keep power on, keep things secured, locked. So there are minimal, but not what we normally would pay to run heat and water and all that.
And we certainly had a boiler situation last fall.
That's true.
Yep. So yes, there has been some ongoing costs.
Anything further? Okay. So with that in guess we'll move
Well,
on.
I think what we discussed at the last board meeting was that we would vote either way. If we were voting to continue the recreation millage, we would do the procedural vote for that. And if we were deciding, which I think the silence kind of connotes, that we would not be, that we wanted to make a vote as a board to say we were not continuing the recreation millage, so.
It is on for the vote, so. Okay, so then we'll move on. Looks like our next discussion item is for the Budget Committee of a whole.
And you're leading.
So if
I
I
will.
may, President Brooks, jump in ahead of you just for a second. Trustees, part of our budget committee meeting a week ago, we spent a little time discussing the budget committee of the whole approach. And one of the things that was really important that came up was the question of why are we really considering this? And what will it do for us? And there were some themes that developed from equal access to information, in that all members are receiving the same material simultaneously, shared understanding, and that everyone is hearing the same discussions and explanations, real time, and then the collective Q&A can be very important as well, as members are benefiting from each other's questions and insights. So, given that as our basis of why, if you will, the committee began to talk about 3 different options. The first option being not a committee of the whole approach, but rather a small study sessions approach. So what this would mean is the budget committee would continue on as a small group. At key points in the year, we would do study sessions for all board members. Essentially, Mr. Lennar, Darcy, myself, we would do these study sessions multiple times on a rotating basis for all of the members. They would certainly be done at key touch points, including budget revisions, audits, amendments, setting of the budget, and at any other time that the board deemed necessary. The second option we talked about was more of a quarterly committee of the approach, which is kind of a hybrid approach in that we would have quarterly committee of the whole meetings. Certainly for many of these same reasons around, we would tie the quarterly committee meetings to revisions, audits, etc. But we would do those 4 times a year, and in the interim, we would maintain our current committee structure. The group kind of thought this was a best of both worlds approach, I guess, if you will. And then the last option we discussed was the full committee of the whole, which again is the comprehensive participation that we have been talking about as a board. So next steps tonight, I'll turn it back over to President Brooks to make some discussion and decisions. We can talk implementation timeline as we get going, but for now I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you for the visual representation there, that's very helpful. So there was a lot of discussion around this. One of the things that was kind of brought forward was Darcy and Mr. Lennar, if we're going to do a committee of the whole, it's live. We're doing it here. We potentially have public. They were concerned about gotcha questions. They putting them on the spot with a kind of like we did tonight a little bit, and that's uncomfortable. So that was one of the things that we talked about. Maybe the study session was a better option. I can go either way on it, but I'd like to hear from the rest of us.
Yeah, I brought back that I was not the first board member to bring committee of the whole, especially for budget, to the board. And we had tabled it a little bit. Any of these options meets my requirement. So, but during the audit situation, there were board members that voiced concern that they were not getting the same amount of information and in the same manner of time as other board members were getting. And then I think now that we've moved out of the audit and we're moving into Steve's good consultant work with us at looking at what happened, and I think he'll share some of that as we talk about amended budget, and Darcy coming on board and using her expertise to from another district that kind of had similar issues of how to document, how to report, and how to share with the board. You know, I think during that time frame, for other board members, there was a little bit of a feeling like not everybody was equally prepared for the discussion at the board table as others. So, obviously, from the discussions we've had this evening, public comments, all of those things, we're at a really critical point, and we'll hear more about this in the amended budget discussion. But we're at a really critical point where every person at the board table needs to have the same information at the same time to be able to prepare for the same discussion. And committee of the whole is one idea for that. Some other districts I've talked to, like, they're like, well, also the treasurer has a meeting and the board members rotate with the treasurer. So, like, for example, those of us who aren't the treasurer would get 2 opportunities to sit down, you know, with the director and ask questions a year. So there's lots of different ways to do that. My goal is, I just wanted to clear, because I brought it back up again just because it came up in seminars and discussions at the annual leadership conference, is that my goal is I don't like to hear any of us feel like we're not getting the same information as others. Because for us to function well, we are all elected. We are all equal on this board. And so it's important that everyone feels like they're getting the information at the same time, has the same amount of time to digest it, has the same access to the directors. And, you know, I've been off, and then I kind of temporarily came back on for one meeting, and then I got into the ad hoc last week. My feeling is, for me, sitting with the directors and other board members and having that open conversation where everyone kind of has maybe a different understanding or a different concern or whatever, but it brings me more information to make an educated decision. And so I thought that discussion was very beneficial. So what I'm saying is, I think any of these options meet that, but I want to make sure that we're at a situation where everyone feels like they are equal in the understanding of the budget, of access to the information to the budget, and opportunities to ask questions. And if options 1 or 2 or another one that comes up through this discussion is what we decide to go with, I think it's good. I just want to make sure that we all feel, you know, and like we're all kind of equal in that understanding.
I also want to make a note of another kind of part of the discussion that we had was regarding, you know, making sure there's a little bit better information provided, was maybe to enhance notes and also the report out. So we talked about potentially the directors, since there's usually a separate director's report on the topic anyways, just having the director's report out instead of the committee heads. And then also those directors would prepare the associated notes for that budget committee versus the head of the chair of the group. So I thought those were 2 good ads.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I said this last time, I hadn't really had a strong opinion in one direction or another. And as we've kind of come into the decisions with the pools, and as Trustee Davis said, we're in this kind of more complex discussion around the budget. I think those discussions where everybody is at the table are very useful. So I agree on that point. I don't, between the options, I mean, whether we're having the study sessions or doing it as a full committee of the whole, I don't have a strong sense in one direction or another. I think bringing the board together for the discussions over these more complex budget issues, I think, is useful. And, you know, I'd be supportive of either way, either approach to it.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jake, and I think part of it, like tonight, when Steve came up here with his new format, everybody followed that. It's different than what we got before. And to Lynn's point about how people weren't getting information equally during the free fall we had, it was like being in New York and watching the big board of Wall Street. Look, this ball comes up, and here comes Apple, they're up. Now the techs are down, now the big, it was up, down. We didn't, it really was, every time we turned a page, there was something different, you know? So it was tough to get a grasp on it in the first 10 days. It just was. I mean, who are you gonna talk to? The person who didn't get it right the first time? So that was, it was unfortunate. I'm not taking a shot at anybody. It's just the situation it was. You know, Matt was trying to figure it out. He got a hold of True, and they sent Steve down after maybe a week after the collapse, and so it took time to get good information out. I mean, I can tell you that Matt's nerves were up, down. He thought we found, okay, it's not as bad as I thought. Oh crap, it's worse than what we thought, you know, and that was what was going on. So I was my fault if it's anybody's, because I got tired of trying to tell people things that didn't last half a day. And so, but you know, even before that, I think it was harder for us, at least for me, I can't speak for everybody, but for me to try and follow what went on in the budget reports before Steve came. It just was, I mean, she'd say, okay, look at your profit and loss sheet, and whereas it wasn't even on until, I mean, the first year I was on the board, couldn't even get anybody to put it up on the board, on the screen, so that was a pain. And I don't think there was any deception there, just if you're an accountant, you figure everybody's an accountant, and we're not. But I think just this format alone goes a long way towards fixing that problem with communication, who understands what. Maybe not everybody else feels that way.
I
And I
did
don't
feel
feel
also it was
pretty
easier to follow. Yeah.
What's that?
I mean, I also felt it was easier to
Yeah.
follow too, yeah.
Exactly.
Trustees, I think if I was to layer in here for a moment, given some of the comments and some of your thoughts, not comments, some of your thoughts, I do believe that the work we have done, particularly over the last 3 months, has, one, reshaped the budget reporting that is going to occur going forward to the board. In doing so, it's going to give you a near real-time, I guess, if you will, percentage estimate of where we are in relation to where we should be at this time in the school year. And you'll notice that in the year-to-date percentages on the revenue and expenditure summary reports. I think that is good. So coming back to then, what is our next step for how we function as a board, and whether that's a hybrid approach or committee of the whole or study sessions? I will certainly follow the direction of the board. There is something for me about the small group nature of study sessions. They are open to the public. We hold them. Just the intimacy of a smaller group, I believe, allows for some, not that we couldn't do it as a whole group, but there is just something about being in a smaller setting, in a small group, and doing that multiple times for board members, so everybody has the same and thorough understanding. And that's something that I did follow up with Josh and Darcy and Steve, who would be committing to these study sessions, and certainly we would do that. I do believe that is a approach worth considering.
So what would that look like?
So we would have to just predetermine when we wanted those study sessions. So I would go back to this slide. Certainly these key budget touch points or key budget study sessions is probably a better way to say it. Certainly we would do it anytime there is a revision. We would do these study sessions prior to a revision. We would do them prior to the actual audit, prior to any amendment revisions, kind of the same thing, but certainly then doing it again in May, when we're getting ready to set the upcoming year's budget. Now, talking with Mr. Lennar, he has told me that his practice is typically he's setting next year's, because of the way the budget is getting monitored now and the way he's keeping track of it at any point in the year, and Mr. Lennar, correct me if I'm wrong here, but in terms of setting the next fiscal year's budget, he's ready and confident to start doing that and having study sessions as early as April.
Actually, next month, we'll be able to share what the governor's budget is for next year, so we'll start talking about it in pieces
Okay.
as we go along over the next several months.
So, maybe sooner, but the point being that we would certainly be doing these sort of study sessions at these critical points in time.
Maybe more importantly is after the audit than before.
Sure.
So that we understand what happened at the audit before you create and finalize the next budget. Might be a recommendation.
The audit's coming
Not
in
at the
November,
audit.
like October, November, and the budget has to be set in June, so
Right, so we would do it prior to
Prior to-
prior to the
audit,
delivery
yeah.
of the audit.
I think we also need to get a different type of reporting on the audit too, because we had bad audits a couple of years before that, and we got the same smiley face show that we got this year. I mean, they only told it really, that whole discussion came down to two people, superintendent and the business, the CFO. So they didn't tell the board, you didn't know. And even that presentation that Maynard gave us here before, I mean, they kind of downplayed a lot of that stuff, in my opinion. It wasn't, and honestly, through this whole mess, when it happened, I mean, my first thought was, okay, we've got a problem, you know, point us the direction where the problem is. Well, we don't do that. Frankly, I would love to go out and just post that position, see, go put it out, a job, request, say, let's see if we can find, let's put it out for bid. Who wants to do this and take it, and maybe we'll end up with the same people, but it doesn't hurt to keep the honest people honest either. I was disappointed with that lack of support.
I think Greg and I are both sort of non-financial people, because that was exactly how I felt about it with the report we got back on the audits as this happened, and reflecting on it, that, they come and give a presentation, right? And it's like, yeah, everything's okay. This is, you guys passed, or, whatever the terminology is. And as someone who's not an accountant, not in finance, trying to parse through that, you sort of start with the framing that you're given, right? And if the auditor is saying you passed, right, then you're beginning to look through the documentation through the lens of everything in here is okay. And, it's hard to know at what point they should have pulled that out, or somebody should have brought that to us in a different way. But it does seem like, we go through these audits, and what we're given back did not help us to provide governance at a minimum.
But I think that might be kind of where before the audit. So an auditor's role is very finite. And previous audits we had like, you were doing it the old way and something came this year that was new, and so you redid it and it didn't have a material effect. Even though maybe our spending or the results were still not as positive as we should have had them, not related to the audit. Some of them were just like, use the old rule instead of the new rule, we applied the new rule, it looks okay, it's not material. What happened this year, I think, is that we had a material difference, and we actually missed the threshold that the state requires to have the budget balance.
Mm-hmm.
And so, so I think the auditor did its job. I don't wanna get on the audit company. But what I think could be interesting is in that study session before the audit, they kind of go through, this is what auditors look like, and this is how I feel like we're doing to it. But these are things I found, and maybe be prepared that you may hear about this. And then after the audit, what are the detailed results of the audit? From, you know, the auditor shares their report, and then maybe if there are things that are found. But I think the use of the new reports and understanding where we are to the budget, it's clearer. Especially if you're not a financial person, it's much clearer what Steve provides.
I
This is
agree on
honestly
that.
what I used to see when the LISD did our finances as a district, with Judy. So, you know, I think we'll know. I feel like the reports now will allow us to visualize sooner that we see a problem coming. And I think with Darcy and with Steve's consultation, we'll actually hear that more. I feel like there's a difference in approach in who Mr. Hilton has brought into the district to help us with budget and finance versus kind of previous situations. So, but I feel, I mean, my position is like, before the audit, I want to know, where do you see risk? Where do you think an auditor is going to tell you there's a risk? And how are you going to share information? And then on the flip side, after the audit, hey, the audit says this, I want to explain it to you, and I want to explain maybe changes I'm making next year, which is something that in previous audits we had talked about with the previous director about, okay, so what are you going to do differently? How are you going to document a better process? How are you going to do this? And then we put that on the superintendent to make sure it was finished. So I think from, you know, tonight's discussion is, do we feel comfortable with having those workshops? Do we feel like that's a step forward, but we keep the budget committee, and then Mrs. Brooks will seat a budget committee?
Right.
And then as we move along, we can talk about, as Mr. Hilton and his team bring us a proposed schedule and maybe topics, that we could say, yeah, does this meet our expectations of these study sessions, or do we want to see something different? And I think occasionally we can kind of pull up a flag and say, hey, this seems to be something that we need a study session on. Can we get a study session on this specific thing, or can, you know, that be brought to the next report and we go into detail about it? As long as there's not something, you know, where a gotcha could occur. So, but that's just kind of my sense of it is, I feel like the workshop is a good compromise, and I think as we build understanding and trust through the process, then maybe it pushes to more of that quarterly kind of thing.
I just have a point of clarification. We did have material findings in the audits for the past several years. They were just different findings than we had this year. And to your point, Greg, about having maybe new auditors, I mean, we could even have, since we don't have an internal audit staff, we can even have an external auditor, or basically like a consultant function as an auditor before the official audit, if we wanted to do that like mid-year or something, just as we're trying to get back and feel comfortable with everything. So we can employ those services even if it was, you know, beyond the annual audit. We just don't have that bit. I mean, there's only a couple people in accounting type roles here, so there isn't really people to do that. But for an oversight function, to have a technical CPA or something reviewing those, I think that would be worthwhile occasionally.
Back on the subject of committee of the whole, just my perception is we've had a lot of change, right? You got the whole committee's changing. We're bringing in we have a very skilled consultant that's already helped us quite a bit. We have Darcy coming in with lots of experience. I'm not for a lot of change all at once. I think you got to let the folks settle in, do their job, at least for a period of time, and then think about it later. But I just think throwing that change in is just another big change at them. And to me, it would be overwhelming and kind of not fair to them, would be my thought. But
So what's the balance? Because I think we have board members that want more information, and I agree with the concept of wanting to balance that. I don't want to overwhelm. I mean, I appreciated Darcy's comment in the committee meeting, but kind of a similar thought, like that's a lot. You know, is the compromise we say we're going to go quarterly, and align kind of these important conversations that were shared as bullet points into those quarterly discussions, and maybe to Mrs. McGee's point, which I think is kind of maybe what Mr. Lenar's role is, but longer term could be a different group kind of doing that pre-audit, for lack of a better term. You know, maybe we start with the quarterly, so that, I also think our constituency that we share wants to know that we're all educated and watching closely. And so I think, you know, maybe it's the quarterly thing, or 4 times a year versus 3, you know, because if I do the calculation of OMA and all that kind of stuff, that would be like 3 meetings for Darcy.
Would be, yes.
So that's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's one preparation, but it's 3 sets of people to meet with. So, you know, maybe it's more of, and I don't even want to say that at that quarter, unless it's beneficial for the director, that the smaller committee can't meet. But if we're having a larger conversation as a board quarterly, you know, maybe that's a good compromise to go with. Let's see how it goes. We may get to a point, to Mr. Miller's comment, that we may find that everything is running really smoothly, that these reports are working, that we all feel like we have the information we need, that, you know, maybe it's more of a twice a year sort of thing, and we can always kind of back off. But maybe that's the compromise. I don't know what everybody thinks of that.
So, just so I understand, so are you saying do the budget committee monthly and then do a quarterly committee of the whole?
Or it's a quarterly workshop with all of the board. Kind of like how we do the requirement for passing the budget is kind of like a public workshop.
Right.
Where the board comes together. We could do that because it's an open meeting.
Okay.
And we should be sharing with the public that we're having that and what we're discussing. So.
I think for these strategic or important items that you mentioned, Mr. Hilton, as well as any other topics, that there should be a workshop or a study session in smaller groups. But I don't necessarily know that it should be like a quarterly, you know, every 3rd week in January kind of thing. I don't think that's necessary. I think therefore times when we have to go through a lot of detail where the meetings could get excessively long, you know, with everything else going on in the meeting, I think that's a time when we need to have like more time set aside, in my opinion.
So I mean, we can vote now to not vote tonight and to take it off the agenda. Maybe Mr. Hilton, if you can go back with your team and kind of put a structure together, you know, to Mrs. McGee's, if quarterly doesn't work because it doesn't cover or it over covers, I think that's fine. I think this discussion's been really helpful, but maybe if everyone agrees, I mean, I can make a motion to take it off the agenda, to modify the agenda. If that's.
I just have one question. The budget update is usually the second meeting of the month, right? Because of timing.
Correct.
So just my thought, because some of the information I've mentioned that it's hard to get sometimes, and I understand, but if we always know it's going to be the second time of the month, the second meeting of the month, if we could get that information a little bit ahead of time, so instead of that Friday, even if it's like a Thursday or Wednesday before, knowing that that's our goal every month, right? That's a target. I think that'll help a lot with the questions and answers. For me personally, it takes me time to digest data and look at it. And maybe that's something Darcy can work towards as a new member to help answer some of that information stuff. And then from there, if it's not enough, we can talk about it. But that's been my general. I've asked Kelly quite a few times. I know it was hard for her, if maybe with this new setup to get things rolling. Not ever, because I know we do it twice a month. The first meeting is hard sometimes, but the second meeting, I think, if we could target that, that'd be helpful.
I want to talk to them first.
Sure,
But certainly
that's fair.
believe that is possible, given how we're now scheduling the budget committee meetings, which is a little later in the month, but prior to the second meeting. And when we do the budget committee meeting, what you got was largely already talked about there. So then we tweaked it a little bit. So let me talk with them. I will add this together, or I will add that and talk with them up to what Lynn was sharing about a proposal, if you will, of our proposal to you of how we might best structure this.
Okay.
Did I capture that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you want me to do the
So if all are in agreement, then we'll go ahead and make a motion to remove the action item for tonight.
I move to remove Budget Committee of the Whole from the action items for the Board of Education meeting January 26, 2026.
Second.
Roll call vote. Trustee Martinez?
Aye.
Trustee Davis?
Aye.
Trustee McGee?
Aye.
Trustee Lewis?
Aye.
Trustee Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. So we will remove that from the action items this evening. It sounds like Mr. Hilton is going to get with his team and come with a new proposal for us, which means I'll put together a budget committee assignment, and that will go out tomorrow. And that takes us into superintendent goal setting. Mr. Hilton.
All right, trustees, at our last meeting, we talked a little bit about some possibilities for superintendent goals. And I asked you some questions, and you shared some priorities. What I think I heard were several different themes, which I anticipated, and those themes ranged from promoting our district's positive story with the potential for some outside help to do so, to seeing more community members, especially those, not especially, including those without children, more regularly engaged in our schools and in our buildings. Certainly expressed the need for better financial oversight, and the idea of a dashboard system came up with checks and balances to monitor budget spending against where we are in the school year. And certainly we've already started down that road, and you've heard some of that this evening. To talking about the importance of the upcoming strategic plan re-engagement, expanding CTE and business courses. So lots of priorities had come up. So what I did, I kind of took the input and tried to blend it down into two goals, with the first one being a robust strategic plan engagement, bringing the community into our schools while promoting our district's achievements. And this would include my work internally, but also externally with groups that I'm regularly a part of: Kiwanis, the city of Tecumseh, the downtown development team, they don't call themselves the business association. Anyway, there's eluding me right now, but the Downtown Business Association, and really engaging with them around our strategic plan and getting community into our schools, amongst others. And then secondly, and we're down this road of a goal, establishing some enhanced monthly financial reporting processes that really include checks and balances through a monthly system that ensures accurate budget monitoring and fiscal oversight throughout the year. One of the things that has come up that you've noticed is the budget management, and through these systems that we're developing, we have a much better sense of where things are at. So I do believe that those two generalized ideas address the board's priority, and they will fit inside of an already pretty large strategic plan, and I would be reporting out on the strategic plan, as well as then specifically these two areas as we go along, should this resonate for you as board members. So I'll pause here. Wanted to say back to you what I thought that you had said to me, and then start to capture it in some form of goal language. I'll continue to work on it a little bit. It's not something you have to vote on tonight, but I want to make sure I'm on the right track and going in the direction you want me to go.
So will the pool committee be part of the strategic communications plan? Is that kind of where that would?
Absolutely. The pool committee is going to be a robust group. I had probably 25 responses from community members, some with children, some without children, some graduates, some community members, some who used the pool, some who believed that this community they don't use the pool, but they just believe in a pool and what it represents for a committee. So I'm going to get that group going, that will certainly be a significant effort as well, and that group can also inform the strategic plan, but they're two, in my head, they're two distinct. They will do this, but there's two distinct groups.
Thank you.
I think you nailed it.
Okay. I'll take it.
Just a comment I'd like to ask the board is, going back to one of Greg's comments he just made about the budget in the past and many budgets failing and not being communicated appropriately. Well, to me, that falls on a goal to the superintendent. I feel like the audit, the prep of the audit afterwards definitely falls on Matt to own it and delegate it. But if you don't put a goal in there, maybe that's one of the reasons it slipped through in the past, and you as board members and whoever was on here didn't get that full report, is because there wasn't an expectation to really do it. So learning from that, do we think about that as a goal and say, yeah, we kind of need to have a little bit more visibility to the audit in the process before and after in a formal report at a certain time?
Potentially.
I mean,
I was kicking around, maybe discussing that with the policy committee, that should be a policy of the board. Because
Yeah.
that is, in my opinion, the things that happened previously, we simply didn't know.
right,
It was kept from us, and that can't happen.
right.
So
How
I
do we
think I'd
address
like
it?
to see it come from a policy perspective,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. I'm not experienced enough to say yes or no. I just thought about how do we get it out there to make it a
Yes.
requirement.
My policy, however you want to do it, it doesn't matter by vote, but, I mean, the one thing that irritated me a little bit is, it was the board's fault. Board didn't get the initial.
Right.
Nobody on the board got the initial audit, so that, not in a timely fashion. So, I mean, a lot of that stuff had happened way before. I mean, I first thought, I talked to Matt, and this doesn't lay in his lap in this case, but, I mean, either the board president or the treasurer, or whoever, somebody we select goes in and views that audit. It may not be either one of those two officers, because if you can't come in during the day because you're working, you select somebody else that is up to, somebody who works in finance, you know, you do budgeting, you know, probably you're not gonna take a day off to come in and see the audit, but, you know, that's the biggest thing is that I was irritated when I read things about the board didn't do this and didn't do that. The board didn't know it. I mean, we only knew what we heard from, you know, the positions that were told, and we didn't
Right.
hear much. So that's the frustrating part, and I think to protect, because we are, I mean, I feel very good about the fact there's 7 of us and Matt's number 8, that we get crisp, clean, efficient information in a timely manner. It wasn't gonna fix the fact there was a mistake, but at least the alarm would have gone off a little earlier.
Sooner, right. No, that's valid, and we were thankful Matt did bring it to us, right? But I was just thinking down the road, so whether it's a
Absolutely.
policy or something.
You will recall that when Ms. McGee had brought up some things, Greg and I both said, we had great audits, what are you talking about? We had no idea.
Right,
And that is just unacceptable to me,
right.
so.
I mean, I read the audits, but when I see material weakness, when Josh was talking about material weakness on I-beams, I get it. I don't know what material weakness is with an audit. I mean, material, paper, pen, I don't know what that meant. I mean, I just didn't. I didn't know the terminology.
Well, and like, I can't remember now who said it earlier, you're up there with a smile telling us everything was good,
Smooth delivery.
so.
I mean, I agree with Mr. Miller. I think, taking the specific individuals out of account, just making a more robust expectation, and our role as a board is that lands with the superintendent, so that's where we put it. But I appreciate Mr. Miller making it more explicit, but I sense from the summary you gave us, Mr. Hilton, that's kind of what you were talking about. How
Yeah.
do you make a more robust process with your team and then to us as your board to make sure that everybody, we know what's coming versus kind of being surprised, and I sense you a good superintendent wants to know what's coming too.
100%. I think that if I can just share a little bit here, my perspective. I understand the need to have a policy in regard to the reporting out of the audit. I also want to say, though, very clearly that as soon as I had that information, my first call was Mr. Lewis. And whether we pass a policy or not, that will always be the case. And I will be transparent with you as board members, and I couldn't give you in-depth, accurate information as timely as I would have loved to, but I also didn't want to give you bad information. And so I do believe that I did that. I do believe that I acted quickly and decisively. I asked some very hard questions. We had a transition in the business office, and then I managed that, and it brought us to a much better place. But at the same time, we didn't just get here either. This didn't just happen. No. The auditors didn't treat me differently.
Right.
And so I understand the need for a policy. I do. But policy or not, I'm not going to act any differently than the way I did last time. Certainly, I'll take your feedback, and if there are things that you wanted more of or less of or different, well, listen, my goal, though, is to never be here again with this sort of instance. And the variance that everybody kept talking about was the least it has been in a number of, at least what was pointed out to me. So I will continue to operate the way that I operate unless you tell me differently. I'll take this to the policy committee, but regardless of what that looks like, I will operate the way that I operate.
I don't
So
think that was directed at you.
I know, but.
Okay.
Yeah,
but-
and to take it one step further than what you're saying, Becky, you know, the point will come eventually when none of us are sitting at this
Exactly.
table, right? And we've learned the hard way here. So I think it's incumbent on us to say, what are all the lessons we take away from this, and where are all the areas that we make change and improvement so that another board down the road isn't repeating our mistakes and then reinventing the wheel.
Exactly.
You know, and so
Yeah.
you know, I look at what happened here, not at all at this point through the lens of blame, right? I mean, but how do we do what we're trying to do better?
Right.
And
Prevention.
right, and how do we normalize and integrate it as a process in what the district does, such that it's not dependent on us having this conversation again in a year or 2 years or 10 years.
Yep.
Right, and I think having the policy committee look at what the policies look like now and what changes can we make to regiment this in a way that's clear and concise for those who come after us is our responsibility.
Yeah, that's good. I agree,
Thank you
100%.
Thank you for putting my thoughts into words. Well said.
Well, and if the superintendent changes, right, you fall back on
Exactly.
policy, right? So,
This whole
Yes.
Right.
table
We're lucky.
will change.
Yeah, so let's dot the i's, cross the t's, and put it in writing now, you know?
So trustees, I will take that to policy committee. We will start down that road, and thank you for allowing me to have a minute to address the board as well. I did intend to come off fairly strongly. I did. I intended it that way. Not so much for you, because I communicate with you regularly about what we're doing, but for the community. And I want. It's going to take me a minute, but you have already seen progress in how we monitor our budget. We
Absolutely.
still have some work to do. You'll see some more of that work coming up when Mr. Lenar presents the amendment. But I did want to have a moment to share what I shared, just for clarity within our broader community as well. So thank you.
And just to be fair, as far as writing those policies, I don't, think it would be normal practice to have study sessions or extensive board involvement before the audit is finalized, because a lot of things can change. There can be some things that kind of need to be trued up that would just naturally happen as part of the process, nothing nefarious or anything like that. So I don't know that would take place, but maybe it's more of like emergency communication. And maybe you communicated to Greg, but maybe there's expectations for the president's communication or something along that line. And I also, to accompany that, also have talked about potentially some changes to the budget process that could help ultimately the audit as well. And then the third thing that I think can help with the audit is my understanding there were little internal controls that were in place, and it wasn't really known, I guess. So a number of internal controls are being put in place. So then that would be like your role, Mr. Hilton, to make sure that those internal controls, that you're signing off on some of those things, you know, you have your mind on top of those things. But we should also make sure that there's a checkpoint with you, and maybe that's part of how you're doing your reporting, like, hey, I signed off on these things, here's something that you should be aware of, those types of things. So the internal control process is also usually the major portion of audits that aren't like the annual audit process. Like if you had an internal audit team, that's what they would be auditing. They would audit against your process and see how that goes. Whereas the end of year audit doesn't really audit processes, it audits the financials. They say the financials are good or bad, and then they, you know, make a few other notes. So, thanks.
I think that one of the things that I would want to do is get into the specifics of what you just shared and really drill down to how that might actually look within our system, given what is, I've always told people, if, I'm making this up, okay, so just bear with me here. I'm not alluding to anything. I'm just making a point. I've always told people if Miss Way was to decide she wanted to be a superintendent and got a job somewhere and walked out tomorrow, I could at least pick that ball up and carry it until I had her replacement. The same would be with Director Ellison in special education, and I could keep us rolling. Human resources, I could keep us rolling. Even Josh's department, now I'm not going to do any of this anywhere as well as Josh or Megan or Sean. That's not what or Danielle. That's not what I'm saying. But I could at least pick things up. Public school finance is so nuanced and so to what Trustee Martinez, you were sharing, and Trustee Lewis. It is so nuanced that this is I have learned a ton over the last 3-4 months. But this is a place where I need people like Darcy and Steve. So to get into those specifics of what Trustee McGee was talking about, so that we can really put all of those things in place. So the more specific we get, the better. I rambled there a little bit, but thank you.
Well, now you can probably carry the ball since you've had.
Well,
Yeah,
no, they're carrying the ball.
All right, so are we good on goal setting? Okay, so our next topic of discussion was the superintendent contract, and I did receive this from Mr. Lewis, but he kind of dealt with it a little more. Do you want to broach this, or?
I can. Unfortunately, I didn't, in September, I had a contract drawn up by, maybe it was early October, by Ray Davis for a new superintendent contract. I think I said in December when I passed out I showed you the comparables with local districts and districts that are about our size, what the pay rates were for superintendent. And, hey, you need to stick around. You're a valedictorian. You're probably the smartest one here.
I'm giving him a pass. I'm dismissing him.
So when I took the class to be board president a year and a half ago at Treetops, one thing they said was you want to if you got a superintendent you like, you want to get him or her locked down right after the first of the year or even before Christmas, because especially in this market where there's a shortage of them and certainly a shortage of good ones, they get poached. So I got a hold of Ray. There is a email, I guess it said private, privilege and confidential at the time. I think it can go out to everybody now. And you want to forward that to everybody?
I can.
Okay. The contract language really didn't change. Ray said there were a couple of tweaks that was, yeah, this is kind of outdated. I think one of them was pertained to how if he left sick day, how it got, or his unused vacation would get paid out. Minor stuff. You had the nuts and bolts of it before Christmas. That's really what it's about, is just getting the pay up to where, I mean, this is their second year, right? So he worked here 2 years with no pay raise, and it's just time to, if you want to keep him around, I do, but if the rest of you don't, that's up to you. We need to make the move now and lock him up. And if it doesn't, I guess it doesn't have to be right now either, because I think all of you should probably have that email just to review it ahead of time.
And of course, that was all on the heels of his evaluation, which of course, he scored top numbers. So I will get that out to everyone, and we'll bring that back for an action item at our next meeting. Any questions on that one? All right. Then that will take us to the 2025-2026 budget amendment briefing by Mr. Lennar. Do you?
Good evening again. We're going to be working mainly off of this document here, which is a summary of the budget amendment that we are proposing this evening compared to the original budget. In your materials, there were two other documents. One of them, we don't need, you could scroll to them if you'd like, Mr. Hilton. One of them was the revenue that when I was here in November, we discussed in greater detail. We've made a few changes and updates to it since November, so it's current. But that gives you a basics for all of the revenues. I'm not going to go into detail on them again this evening, but you have the data there in front of you where you can see where all the changes are ending up. The second document is a little bit more detailed than the summary of the budget, and it shows the expenses when we look at them, the by function one, the other report. It shows the beginning budget to the proposed budget, the dollar amount change, and then a brief description, very brief obviously, of a few words of what happened in those areas that created this change or a reason for this change. Those sub areas in instruction, when we talk about basic instruction, it's over $15 million of our budget. It's made up of elementary, middle, so we get into more detail there, so you can see there's more information in there than just one big number. It's made up of all these smaller little segments. And likewise as we go through the budget. And so that was a part of this, but we want to stay on the summary page, but we wanted you also to see all of the different little subtitles within there that I don't think you've seen in the past, in the different activities that happen in the school district from an instructional and a support service side. Instructional is everything directly classroom. Support service are all of those things that go around that make it all work, being from student support to facilities, finance, and so forth, Board of Education and Superintendent's Office. So with that, we'll go back to the summary. And I just need to start with just a couple of comments so you know where I'm coming from. And it's a little scary being up here after 45 years doing this. You'd think I'd be okay. Historically, over my career, I worked in 6 different school districts. And when you start in a school district, it takes at least 12 to 18 months to get a feel for how do we spend the money, who does what, and everything. And so, unfortunately, we didn't have that kind of time this time around. So I don't want to say these are my best guesses, because they're not guesses. They were done mathematically. But this is our attempt to write the budget and get us to where we believe we are. And so I'm not saying it's totally right. I've made mistakes before. The bar is pretty high here to make sure that we're doing it right, and I think we are. We're on the right track. But there's no silver bullet. There's no magic wand that I'm waving that says it's all going to be true and happen exactly the way we say it. So with that, I have some prepared comments to read through this, and I'll elaborate some of the areas as we do, okay? Because like I told Mr. Hilton, if I don't have some prepared documents, I could stand up here and talk for an hour, and I don't want to take, and I have to drive home yet tonight, so. But regardless of all of that, obviously this report tonight details the proposed January budget amendments that we have for the 25-26 fiscal year. We're comparing these to our original projections that were given to you and that you approved in June to the updated figures across various school functions that we pointed out just previously here with the other documents. We anticipate that revenues will increase over $1 million, as you see there, $1,049,822, primarily driven by a boost in state funding, despite some small adjustments and losses in federal and local transfers. This was mainly because of the foundation grant change and a stable enrollment for those main discretionary funds. Keep in mind, you approved a budget in June. We received a state aid bill in October. So 3 months, over 90 days after we approved a budget, we found out what our funding was. So obviously there's going to be some changes. The one issue, though, with all of this, the extra million, over half of these funds, or 565,000, almost 565,980, are restricted. And restricted means that they're tied directly to another expense for specific funding purposes. So they're not discretionary. This $1 million wasn't $1 million that we could just go out and spend on whatever we wanted to. It was tied to different grants or funding. In some of the examples I gave in that function breakdown was UAAL. That's the retirement system unfunded liability revenues that we received. Those revenues increased by $227,000. Well, they also increased on the expenditure side too. Where we got the revenue, we now have to spend it. So when we look in total then of the $1 million, like I said, about 566 is restricted. If we would scroll down a little bit and just focus on the expenditures now, Mr. Hilton, thank you. The total expenditures are increasing by $1,796,000. 566,000 of that is tied to new revenues. So if you say, my God, our expenses were off by $1.8 million, no, not really, because we had $566,000 in revenue changes that were tied to some of those expenses. So only about $1.2 million were other items that we'll share with you here. On the expenditure side, as we look at this, the instruction area, the bold topic there, basic and added needs, in total costs rose by roughly $1 million. The substantial portion of that is in the added needs that is allocated to the special education staffing that was not accounted for in the original budget, along with some other curriculum needs for adjustments to properly fund the new math series this year, and again, that was not adequately funded after review within that department person's responsibility was shared with the business office. So those are two of the biggies in there. Beyond the classroom, we get to the support services, or all that other list of details there. In that area, two main areas that I'd like to point out, and that is in the instructional staff area. You see that the increase is $246,000. And that change was mainly because there were two long-term staffing positions. I couldn't believe my eyes. I had to call Darcy. I had to tell Matt. I said, I can't believe this. I looked at last year's budget. That budget was there and the person was spent there. I looked at the current original budget. The person's getting charged there and there's no budget. It was totally omitted. Over close to $300,000. There were some other changes in that area that reduced it. But that added almost $300,000 to the budget, and again, because something was actually omitted that was there last year. It was tough finding those things. The other things within the operational side that really made a big difference was, again, after discussions with the maintenance, with Josh, and the need for the cost of our custodial cleaning contract, that was underfunded by nearly $265,000. We needed over $1,050,000 and $785,000 was budgeted. So discussions that took place with proper administration and different department heads, and they were told that this is what we need, didn't make it to the budget. They're in there now. And the same was true with some costs in transportation. There were a lot of other small things that went back and forth. I'm obviously hitting on the big ones that made a big difference. Unfortunately, when we take the revenues and these changes that we're showing here, the original budget was predicted with a surplus. But after this detailed comprehensive update, unfortunately it's resulted in a projected deficit this year of $365,182. Again, the main reasons for these adjustments, I believe, are summarized into two categories: staffing inaccuracies and contract variances. And there were some other smaller ones in there. You know, I say smaller, $50,000, $75,000 doesn't sound like much. You make 3 or 4 of those and all of a sudden you got $250,000. So there were things like that. The fund balance was originally estimated to be 12% of general fund expenditures in the budget that you approved in June. The beginning fund balance was scheduled to be 3.58, but was lowered to 2.86 based on the audit results from last school year. When we take a look at that, we actually ended last year, that fund balance of $2,857,000 was 8.21% of general fund expenses. Now, one of the things that we learned, or you heard about in October, was the state threshold of not being below 5%. 5% is done on a different calculation. It's done on unrestricted revenue. So what we've done here now, and when we talk about the fund balance, is that the unrestricted revenues, if we subtract those from those revenues last year and divide our fund balance into that, we would get 10.99, or just about 11%. When we look at this year's budget, there's around $7.5 million, $7.6 million, I've got it written down here somewhere, of unrestricted revenues, or excuse me, of restricted revenues. When we take those and subtract it from the 34.466 million and divide our fund balance into that, we get 9.35. So we're still not very close to the 5%, we're closer. But we're not knocking on the doorstep of Treasury saying, hey, we're at 5% or lower. Obviously, one of the things that we have to do is continue to monitor our budget to make sure that that we will maintain that, and if anything, hopefully we can make it go the other way before the year is over. Those are the biggies in terms of what happened. I think one of the things that's very helpful, and again, I guess sort of reassuring for me that I believe we're on the right track. Can you scroll up a little bit, please, Matt? When you look at, perfect, right there, so we can look at those expenses. When we think of what happened last year, it was expenses that were omitted last year also. There wasn't enough money for the special ed expenses last year. So now, when we look at this, I know the heading, you can't see the headings, but the column on the far left is the audit. That's where we ended up last year. And while I've summarized it in this format, I don't do this side by side to see how close we're going to come. I'm going through individual things, doing hundreds of calculations, putting the numbers in the computer, letting the budget spit it out, and it gives us the update. What I find reassuring is that when you look at those audited numbers and where we are now with our projected update, they seem reasonable. It wasn't reasonable to go from $4.9 million in added needs to $4 million. That's just not reasonable. And about 800,000 of that, we spent 3.8+ million in special ed last year. The budget to start this year was $2,998,000, $3 million. So we budgeted $3 million this year for something we spent $3.8 million on last year, and special ed costs don't go down, not by 25% nearly. So when I look at the budget and I compare the audited to the existing, it seems like it's tracking, and it's in terms of how we spent the money last year to me. And obviously we're going to continue to watch it as we go through the year, and we'll make adjustments to it as we go forward. We'll be back in probably May for our second and final update of the year. We're not waiting till June 23rd to give you a final budget. We're going to call it in May, because at that point in time we're worried about the following year. We've got to know that this year is okay, but we're getting ready to present the next year's budget. So we're going to have things wrapped up and know where we are early enough. If you're getting it in May, that means we're done in April. That's where we're headed with this. Like I said, I really I believe we're in a better situation. I'm more comfortable with the updated numbers than what we were given to begin with. And we'll move forward.
So, Mr. Lenard, just to say that a little bit, or not a little bit, to say that in my own words, the bridge that you're looking at is the 24-25 audited number to the January 2025-26 update. And noticing that this, in the added needs line, as an example, we know that we spent 4.9 million in added needs in 24-25. We only budgeted just over 4 million, but the bridge you're making and the comfort is coming from this 4.9 known from audited to an updated now of 5.1, and that seems so
Yes.
much more reasonable.
Yes, that's how I'm looking at
Yep.
it,
Okay.
from that first column to the third column.
Steve, this is great. I love it. But I have a question. So, have you looked at the June of 25, right before we were setting the budget, is what we were provided with? This is where we think we're going to end the year. So we set the budget based on that. Was that number a huge gap to that 4.9 million audited? Because that audited came later, right? That came after the audit.
That came in after audit. So the question would be, what was that number in the final budget that was approved?
The final projected year end for 25.
24-25.
Yes, because that's what they based on. So if someone shows us, oh, it looks like we're going to be at 3.8 million, we'd probably look at it and be like, oh, 4 million sounds pretty good.
Right, the 4 million had to look reasonable with the information
Provided.
at that point.
Yeah, and I'm just
Right.
wondering, then my next question would be to Steve, is how do we go back and look at how that was missed? Do you see how I'm tracking? Because otherwise, because I don't remember anything sticking out, like that would have stuck out to us, I think. I don't remember it. I'll have to go back and look, or someone will, and you don't have to do it tonight. I was just asking this question.
There's a report in here that I could see the numbers. I know that, I don't know them specifically, but
Me,
they weren't 4.9 million, I know that.
right. So maybe we could, at some point, ask Matt
Sure.
to go back and add that column in there, just so we can get a feel for how far were we off in June.
Sure.
And start thinking about the process of that, because this is amazing. I mean, we've never seen this detail. This is great.
I understand what, yeah, okay. Yes.
right, thank
So
you.
we can work on that. You don't have to dig through your.
No, please
file
no.
further.
God.
I don't have any questions, Steve, because I was in the budget, able to ask there, but I acknowledge the extraordinary work that you've done in a very short amount of time for our district. And knowing that you worked for another district and took us on, thank you very much for all of
you're
your
welcome.
support. You have made this difficulty easier to understand and have given us some good recommendations moving forward. And so, and I know you're sticking around for a little bit more. This isn't a goodbye speech.
So
but-
far.
But I,
I'm
but
only
I,
joking.
yeah, and to Darren's point, I mean, I think we know from looking at the audit, we know what the answer to that is. It was a lot lower. But knowing how much and why that happened is another good thing. And so I just, again, I don't have questions because I was in the committee, in the committee meeting, but I just want to acknowledge and thank you.
You're
Very
welcome.
sincere
And
gratitude.
the goal for me isn't just to spit out numbers and say, here's the budget. It's also to educate you and Mr. Hilton. He's come a long ways in 3 months, 4 months. But the goal is to get you and give you numbers to help you better understand what the numbers mean versus just being numbers on a page. They're important and real to me, and I want them to be, and I understand them, I want you to understand them. You'll never understand them to the depth that Darcy and I do, but I want you to have that comfort with them also.
We appreciate that. Any other questions for Mr. Millage? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Safe-
Hope you have
safe-
school tomorrow.
Me
Safe
too.
travels home.
Me too.
Yeah, that's,
What number are we at? So our next discussion item is regarding the copier RFPs that was added to our discussion items by Mr. Maxson.
All right. As you may or may not know, one of the biggest reoccurring monthly expenses we have in the district is copiers, copier service, the printing. So we did put out an RFP. We talked to the board previously that this would be happening. And we did, after that we put out that RFP, we did receive 7 vendors that provided bids. You guys have a copy of the bid tabulations in your packet, as well as a combined evaluation sheet that shows how these RFPs were evaluated, these bids were evaluated. Of the 7, there were 3 of them that scored the highest, which are noted in your bid tab. There's 2 in yellow, 1 in green. And then on that second page with the combined evaluation, you can see where those scores actually landed. Only the top 2 are actually highlighted on that combination evaluation form. How we came up with these numbers is this was actually submitted in the RFP, how the breakdown would happen. We would have 5% of your score was based on innovation, value-added features, 40% was based on solution fit and quality, 20% was based on cost competitiveness, 10% for service level and support, 15% for experience and references, and 10% for security and compliance, giving the full 100%. Each of these, as you see on the evaluation sheet, were scored by 3 different people. It was myself, our IT service manager, and a representative from Creek Enterprises, who is our back-end technology. They work on all of this stuff for us. So there were 3 independent evaluations. Those numbers were then combined and weighted with those percentages we just talked about, giving a total available of 15 points. As you'll see, the top 2, Conica Minolta and Applied Innovation, both scored 10 or higher. Further interviews and questions were given to those vendors. And at this time, we are recommending, though Conica Minolta did score slightly higher, we are recommending the board goes with Applied Innovation. The 2 biggest reasons with that being they do have a large market share in this area, unlike Conica Minolta, so they do have quite a reference list. They work in a number of other school districts and other businesses in the surrounding counties and Lenawee County. And also, at the end of the day, they were about $12,000 cheaper per year than Conica Minolta for providing the same quality service that we expected with this RFP. So that is going to be our recommendation to the board. I know the top 3 bidders, their bids were supplied to you guys as well to thumb through, and I do have originals if you guys ever want to look at them further. But that is the Operations Department recommendations to go with Applied Innovations. And this contract would start July 1. This is not something we would start mid-year. We get this approved now, and then they would get the equipment lined up, and we'd plan for next budget year on this.
We buying them or leasing them?
So this would be a $1 lease. So it's a lease with a $1 buyout at the end. So we own the equipment still at the end of the lease. Previous time, we did buy them ourselves outright. There is some savings up front for that, but at the end, with the service and the per-page costs, it actually is coming out more when you evaluate these lease versus buy options to do that purchase versus having the dollar buyout lease.
Josh, I know we talked about it, does the service allow us to track usage
It does.
by
yeah.
ID or something, so you get an idea where we need to?
Yep,
Hey.
every one of these, if you look at the one column, says secure print software, that was a requirement of the RFP. So every one of these does include the paper cut program, would allow us to not only track usage, but it also gives secure printing. So if I print something from my computer, it doesn't just sit on a copier until I go up there and I actually touch my ID and it'll print it for me. So that does help us with security around the building as well.
You don't have to give them 57 copies of something you want in color.
Correct. Yeah.
Any other
Thank-
questions for Josh? All right, thank you, sir. That will take us to action items.
All right. So we're moving to not renew the millage, right? Okay. So, yeah, I know, I was trying to think, because we're not actually, we're choosing not to do this. Okay. I move that the board does not vote to approve the recreational millage.
Second.
I'm sorry, will you repeat that?
Move that we vote to not approve, not renew the millage.
Second.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. See, it gets weird when you start to try
I
to,
know,
yeah.
I was like, what did he say? Okay, so roll call vote on not renewing the recreational millage. And trustee Martinez
Aye.
and trustee Davis,
Aye.
trustee McGee,
Aye.
trustee Lewis,
Aye.
trustee Miller,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. So that will not be renewed.
I have one question on that. So when would taxpayers see that change of it not being on their bill?
So let me confirm, but I believe it's done. And they would not see it as part of this summer's tax collection.
Okay.
But let me confirm.
Thought that's what we
Yeah.
said before.
All right. And we removed the discussion, or I'm sorry, the action item about the budget committee of a whole, so we will go on to consent agenda.
All right, I move that we approve the notes from the meeting for January 12th, 2026.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Roll call vote. Trustee Davis,
Aye.
trustee McGee,
Aye.
trustee Lewis,
Aye.
trustee Miller,
Aye.
trustee Martinez,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye as well. That will take us to the superintendent's report.
Thank you, trustees. There's no formal superintendent's report this evening.
Okay. Items scheduled for next agenda?
Certainly, trustees, we'll have some good news items. There will be some discussion items, a few action items. I will be bringing forward a report around enrollment, projected enrollment, schools of choice windows, very similar to some decisions that we made last year that I think we'll be faced again with this year, but I'll share more in 2 weeks.
When do you think we'll be talking about the preschool events for the summer?
How many people?
Yeah, like kindergarten roundup and the
Oh,
whole.
all that's coming. Kindergarten Roundup's going to be April 11th.
Okay.
Certainly, I will be sharing so much more about that, and it'll be structured similarly. If I'm answering your question, if I'm not, cut me off. It'll be structured similarly to last year, where we'll have community groups on site. Our preschools will be there. Other community agencies will give bus rides, and tours, and teachers, and visit classrooms, that sort of thing. Am I?
Yeah, I was just wondering when the promotion of that would start.
Oh, probably mid-February.
Okay. I'm only asking because I've already seen one come out from
Yeah,
another
you
school.
are seeing
So,
some of them come out.
yeah.
People are starting to launch their kindergarten roundups. The big thing is tying it to your school of choice windows so that you can promote and say you're open on this date. We're on track.
So before we get our vote for adjournment to closed session, I will read the statement. Pursuant to Public Act 267 of 1972, Section 8.2B, to consider the dismissal, suspension, or disciplining of a student if the public body is part of the school district, immediate school district, or institution of higher education that the student is attending, and if the student or student's parents or guardian request a closed hearing.
I move that we move to closed session.
Second.
Roll call vote. Trustee Martinez?
Aye.
Trustee Davis?
Aye.
Trustee McGee?
Aye.
Sorry. Trustee Lewis?
Aye.
Trustee Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. We are in closed session.
Trustees, we will go to my office.
There you go.